What I want to do is I want to finish Parshas Pinchas and then go on to Parshas Mattos, see if we can finish Pinchas today. Okay, we have a few points that we want to get to. First of all, last time we spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu looking into Eretz Yisrael, if you remember. Now we're going to Perek Chav Ches Pasuk Vav on page 28:6. 890. Okay. So here we have an interesting the law of the daily offering. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor, page 890. Vaydaber Hashem, which are 7 lines from the top. Tzavis b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleihem, es korbani lachmi le'yishai reach nichachi tishru la'aklivi b'moado. And this is the daily offering that's brought. V'amarta lahem zeha isha asher takrivu la'Hashem kvasim b'nei shana tabimim shnayim la'yodam Olas Tamim. The daily offering, this is brought every day in the Beis HaMikdash. Es hakeves echad ta'aseh v'boker. 1 sheep you shall bring in the morning. They have over here the daily offering. Now, one of the commentaries says that this alludes to the idea, the word keves. If you take a look at hakeves ha'echad, on Pasuk Dalid, keves, if you know the shin, sin, the dot by the shin and the sin, it's a shin. It just has a dot which determines it. But it could also be read in the Torah. There are no punctuation, no vowels in. If you look at the Sefer Torah, so the word keves could also be wrote as kevesh, right? It's just a shin and a sin, which are interchangeable. And kevesh comes from the Hebrew word kovesh, which is conquest. So one of the commentaries says, "Es hakeves echad ta'aseh v'boker." How does he translate to Arbein Harboim, by the way? He translates as dusk in the afternoon. That means you bring 1 sheep in the Beis HaMikdash and they start the daily offering with a sheep, and the morning sheep, every single day. It's the Olas Tamim. It's the consistent offering in the Beis HaMikdash. But there's a conquest that we're involved with. There's a conquest in life, and that is conquering. We're in a constant state of war. Somebody once, what is that war, by the way? What's the battle? They battle with the evil inclination. It's a constant battle, relentless. They get up in the morning, got to get out of bed, and he's there. Right? He gets up at Nate's. Right? He's there to help you out and tell you to stay in bed, and all the temptations of life, and so on and so forth. There is a conquest. One of them is the conquest early in life, and one is the conquest later in life. Es hakevesh, reading keves is kevesh. 1 conquest, ta'aseh b'boker. In the early stage of life, there's a certain type of conquest, which is, for the most part, when a person is young, it's a conquest of physical desires. When a person is younger, the physical desires are very, very strong. And the conquest in the early stage of life is the physical desires. Then there's a conquest later in life. When a person gets older, then it's the conquest of more spiritual pursuits. Honor, the pursuit of honor for older people, an older man especially, where he's losing already, his physical drives are dissipating. So then what he's got is his own self-respect and his own dignity. A person is looking very much often for honor or to be recognized at later in life, and sometimes older people can get very sensitive. Page 890 for everybody came in late. An older person, so there's always a Yetzer Hara lurking. There's always somebody. So there are 2 types of conquests that we have to make. And one of the commentaries says, if a person failed in the morning and didn't make that conquest, he could still, it's never too late. You can make the conquest later in life as well. It's not a good idea to wait too long. You want to start early and beat the afternoon rush, right? But it's always a good idea. But a person should never fail. We had a guy here at Ohr Somayach. I don't remember exactly what the story was. I think he was 68 when he became a Baal Tshuva. and he died when he was 86, and he made a siyum on Shas. Not bad for what do you call it? He became a Baal Tshuva at 68. Now, most people don't become Baal Tshuvas that late in life. Most Baal Tshuvas are, in the 20s and 30s. Most people don't become Baal Tshuvas when they're in their 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s because you see there's a very, very difficult psychological hurdle that you have to overcome. When you're 20 or 25 and you make a life change, so you can admit to yourself, yeah, you know what, I've been doing something wrong up until now, and it was great, but now it's time to get serious. When you're 60 or 65 and you've got a family and you've lived your life, to turn around and say, I've lived my entire life wrong is a very difficult thing. That's why you don't find a lot of the Archie Bunkers of the world becoming Balei Tshuva. It's difficult. You're already set in your ways and you've already determined you've got a certain cognitive dissonance. It can't be that I'm wrong, because if I admit that I'm wrong, that means I've lived my entire life wrong. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And therefore, there are people who have done it, though. There are people who have turned it around even later in life. But the Torah is telling you over here, don't be discouraged, even if it took a while. So you can always turn it around. When a person turns it around, then everything he's done beforehand is wiped off the slate, number one. Number two, the Torah then says over here, I want you to skip down to Pasuk Vav, about 9 lines from the bottom. It says, Olas Tamim, Ha'asuya Bahar Sinai L'Reach Nichoach Isha LaHashem. It's the Olas Tamim that was done at Har Sinai. And you should bring it, take a look at Rashi and Pasuk Vav, left column, 6 lines from the top. Ha'asuya Bahar Sinai, Ka'osan Shenasu Bimei HaMiluin, like the ones that were done during the inauguration of the temple. So the commentaries ask over here, is there a sitter, by the way, on the table anywhere? Is there a sitter? A sitter. Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. If it's a small one, you know what it's called? A babysitter. What do you call it? Sorry, that wasn't nice. It's like Mr. Bigger had a son who was bigger. Mr. Bigger had a son who was bigger. His son was a little bigger. Okay, that's it. I think those are called daddy jokes, father jokes. They're pretty sad. Yeah, that's age appropriate. So the commentaries ask over here, why is it that the Torah here, when mentioning this daily offering, somehow the Torah links it up to Har Sinai? The Torah says, well, you're going to bring these offerings just like the offerings that were brought at Har Sinai during the inauguration period, when they were close to Sinai. What's the connection between the daily offering that we bring? We don't do it today because we don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We do say it in the davening. In the morning, we say this section of the Olas Tamim in the davening, which is, that's the only one of the korbanos. In the beginning of the Siddur, you have all the korbanos, the offerings that are brought in the beginning of the Siddur. So there are people who say all the offerings every day, which is a great thing. Some people say all the korbanos every day. The only one that's mandatory is the Olas Tamim, is the daily offering, which we say every day. The question the commentators ask, so what's it got to do with Har Sinai? Why did you link it up over here to Har Sinai? We're talking about a daily offering which took place all through the period of the Beis Hamikdash and so on and so forth. And so the answer is that, there's always a danger in life that anything that you do on a regular basis, it becomes, you start doing it by rote. It's already, okay, here we go again, put a tefillin again, and davening again, and Shemona Esrei again, and, all that, it all becomes second nature. You lose the enthusiasm. What was the enthusiasm like when they brought it at Har Sinai? What was the enthusiasm like when the first time they brought it? Can you imagine, wow, the korban, wow, everybody's all pumped up for the first time they're going to bring this korban. The only one who probably wasn't so excited was the sheep itself. But everybody else, other than the sheep, were probably, they're really into this thing. It's a korban, it's a novelty, it's something new. So the Torah is telling us, yes, it's true. And when you're going to bring this every day throughout history, try to maintain the same enthusiasm that you had when it was at Har Sinai the first time. And that's always the trick in all areas of life of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every time we put on tefillin, it should be, which I've always said, Yiddishkeit should not be mechanical, but it should be automatic. It's automatic, but not mechanical. That means it's automatic that I'm going to put on tefillin this morning. It's automatic that I'm going to shul. But when I'm there, it shouldn't be mechanical. It should be with a certain amount of feeling. So when you put on tefillin, it shouldn't be, again, with feeling not artificial feeling. not artificial, not like, okay, let's wow, I feel the tefillin buzz. No, it should just be that, okay, well, I'm doing something important now. I'm putting on tefillin. If you think that once each day, you're a great person. I'm putting on tefillin now. It's a separate mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that's a d'oraisa. Then think about the davening. But whatever we do should always be done with a certain amount of, it should be done with a certain amount. If you ever want to see somebody who does something on a regular basis with enthusiasm, watch women lighting Shabbos candles. If men would serve God the way women light Shabbos candles, Mashiach would have been here a long time ago, that I can tell you. You ever see a woman who light the Shabbos candle? It's a whole, you know why they do this, by the way? Do you know why they do this? Symbolically, they're bringing in Shabbos. Symbolically, they're bringing it in, and they do it. Whatever women do, they do responsibly. Whatever we do irresponsibly. Whatever women do, they do responsibly. And it's the same. They light the candles every week, and they say a tefillah, they say a prayer for the family, but they're doing it with all their heart. They do it with all their heart. Women make challah for Shabbos. They do it with all their heart. Everything they do with their heart. If a man, that's what we're supposed to do. So we do it with all our heart. And again, all our heart doesn't mean a public display for everybody to see. It means that we should have a little bit of thought that goes into it. Now, if you take a look, the month of Elul is coming up. Where are we in now? We're in Av. No, we're not in Av. We're Tammuz of Elul. In 2 months is going to be the month of Elul. Now, there's a tradition. In the month of Elul, we say a tefillah at the end of davening called the David Hashem Ori. Right? The David Hashem Ori, we say it at the end of davening. Ashkenazim say it after Shachris and after Ma'ariv. Sfardim say it after Shachris and after Mincha. Or Nusach Sfard says it. Sorry, Nusach Sfard does it after Shachris, after Mincha. What Sfardim do, I'm not sure. But Nusach Sfard says it. Now, if you notice, there seems to be a bit of a contradiction here. Because in the David Hashem Ori, David HaMelech, this is from Psalms, I think it's Psalm 29 if I'm not mistaken. 27, sorry, my bad. So it says like this. David HaMelech says, Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem, osa avakesh. I ask one thing from God. Now pay attention carefully. Shivti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. I want to dwell in the house of Hashem all of my life. And nowadays the house of Hashem is obviously what? What's the house of Hashem today? What's that? Yeah, right. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. So what's the house of Hashem? The Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Medrash. To be in a Beis Medrash, the learning Torah. That's the greatest wish, is that we should be learning Torah. If it's not the greatest wish, it should be. Lachazos b'noam Hashem ulevakir behechalo, and to visit in His sanctuary. So David HaMelech says, I have a desire. I want to dwell in the house of Hashem my entire life, and I want to visit in His sanctuary. Now, make up your mind. You want to dwell there or you want to visit there? You want to dwell in Hashem's house or you want to visit in Hashem's house? Everyone seems to contradict himself in one sentence. You hear the contradiction. He says, Shivti beveis Hashem koy, I want to dwell in the house of Hashem, ulevakir behechalo, but to visit in the sanctuary. You want to dwell there or you want to visit there? Dwelling and visiting are two different things. Right? So the answer, one of the answers to resolve this contradiction. Okay, you can answer. One's talking about the Beis Hamikdash, one's talking about the Beis Medrash, but assuming it's talking about the same place. The idea is it's an insight into how we should approach our own Yiddishkeit, which is, let's say you live somewhere which is a tourist. Let's say there's a place where a lot of tourists go, like Florida. Right? A lot of tourists go to Florida, Yerushalayim, Cleveland. Somehow not, right? Let's say you live somewhere where a lot of tourists go. You live in Yerushalayim, you live in Florida. I don't know where else the tourists go. France, I guess. Paris. All these. Huh?
New York, yeah.
Where?
Vegas.
Vegas, yeah, Vegas. There you go, Vegas, yeah. So the rule is, why is it that I remember I once went to Florida for Pesach. I was so excited when I got there. That lasted for 10 minutes. But I was excited when I got there for Florida. Wow, Florida. everybody goes to Florida for great. How come my friends who live in Florida were leaving for Pesach? If it's so wonderful, why are they leaving? In Yerushalayim, you could even see in Yerushalayim, you see tourists in Yerushalayim. a mile away. Wow, falafel. Where and I've been living here. We don't, I'd say, hey, even going to the Kaisel. I hate to admit it. To go to the Kaisel, to Western Wall. Been living here a long time. It's like, take it. Well, you want to go? Should we go? We'll go next time. We got. You get tourists come here. They go to the Western Wall. Wow, the Western Wall, which is how it should be. It's how it should be. Or people go to Tzfas. My son lives in Tzfas. Right? He's a Litvak, by the way. He's 100% Litvak. Just what do you call it? He just happens to live there. He's 100% Litvak. He doesn't do drugs. He's what he is. He's what he call. He's what he call. 100% learns in Kollel and say he's actually he teaches in a school in Tzfas. He's 100% Litvak, but he lives in Tzfas. He left Tzfas for Shabbos. A lot of people go to Tzfas for Shabbos, right? Why is it that when you live there, you're not as excited as the people are coming there for a visit? And the answer is because you live there. You start taking it for granted. You take it. It's like, it's the way we do this all the time. Been there, done that type of thing. So what David HaMelech is saying is he's saying a tefillah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to dwell in the house of Hashem my entire life. I want to be involved in studying Torah and in living like a Torah Jew. But I want that it should be like I'm visiting ulevakir behechalo. But each time I go to the shul, and each time I go to the Beis Medrash, and each time I do a mitzvah, it should be like I'm visiting. Because when you're visiting, you have much more excitement. When you're visiting, there's much more enthusiasm. So I want that my entire life to be, it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. You can look at people who work jobs. A guy gets out of law school, takes on his first job as a lawyer. He is so excited the first day. He's actually wearing a suit. And he goes to work and he's got his own little cubby and whatever it is that he's going to be doing. And he's so excited. How long does that excitement last for? A few days, a couple of weeks probably. Then it wears off. Then you're doing this the rest of your life. And then you got to muster up the excitement each time you go. It's like other people look like, wow, that's so glamorous to be, wow, that sort of thing. And you lose it. It loses its allure. And that's what we're davening for. We daven that the allure of Torah and mitzvahs, whatever that we're doing, we should always carry that enthusiasm with us. That's the trick. Okay. That is, yeah. Ulevakir means to visit, yeah. Ulevakir behecholo, to visit Nizah, yeah. Yeah, Blake, go ahead.
I'm assuming this mentality applies to marriage.
Oh boy. Oh boy. And that's exactly why you have the laws in marriage, and that's a very important point. The entire concept of marriage, of a Torah marriage, why you have the laws of family purity, enforced separation, so that the relationship between the husband and wife does not become something that becomes stale, that the relationship, there should be a freshness there. And more than that, it should be always that every day is the same enthusiasm. That a person realizes every day that this is a person that they have to, and it's not easy. Obviously, it's not easy. And nobody you take for granted more than family members. It applies to parents also. It applies to, people take their parents for granted. Well, they've given me this much, they should give me a little bit more. There isn't a person in the world that doesn't have some gripes against his parents. Why didn't they do this, or they should have done this, or give me this, or this, a little bit of this. And a person stops to think, you know what, instead of griping, I should think about how much I owe my parents. Look, my parents have put up with me. I know who I am. Look, my parents, what I put my parents through the ringer. A person should think about that. So any relationship requires a certain amount of trying to rekindle that enthusiasm constantly. That's why the Torah, the Torah attitude towards marriage is that marriage has to constantly be kept with a very high level of respect for each other. And the more you respect your spouse, the more you're going to have the enthusiasm. Yeah, please.
To go back to dwelling in the house of Hashem, aren't people equated to be Mishkan? And that's where Hashem's presence dwelt in the...
Each person
is a Mishkan. We want
correct.
Hashem to dwell within us.
Right. We all want Hashem. That's true. That's one. There's a Vavi Mishkan Evda. We build in our hearts. We build a Mishkan. And each person is a Mishkan. But over here, one of the explanations is that it's talking about two attitudes. There's an attitude we always want to be doing, but we want to be doing it with enthusiasm. Okay, one last point over here in Perek Chav Tes, Pasuk Yud Tes. Skip ahead, one last point, and then we're going to Parsha's what do you call it, Mattos Maseh. You know what, just go straight to Mattos. Go straight to the next Parsha, because it's a double header. No, it's a double header. There's what do you call it? It's the longest Torah reading of the year, because it's a double header this year, Mattos and Maseh. And the very first section over here begins with the idea of vows. You ever heard of a neder? There's a neder where a person says, you ever hear people say bli neder? You ever hear people say bli neder? Have you heard it? Bli neder means that I'm not making a vow. If people say bli neder, or they don't want to make sure it's not a commitment, that I'm going to do it bli neder. I'm not making a vow, I'm going to do it bli neder. You just have to be careful as a Baal Tshuva. If you're going to use these terms, make sure you use them correctly. Because sometimes people say, "Hi, how are you feeling?" "Oh, bli neder." Are you going to be doing this for me tomorrow? Kedai nahara. Just get it right. If you're going to do it, get it right. Mirza Hashem, Baruch Hashem. That's right. Just make sure you get it. Just make sure you get it right. And by the way, don't use it too much around your parents. Right? Don't use these expressions around your parents. They don't want to hear all sorts of expressions of which they don't know the meaning. Hi, how are you feeling? Oh, Baruch Hashem. Or if your mother serves you supper, you say, oh, Yasher Koyach. Or Tizkila Mitzvahs. Don't Tizkila Mitzvahs your mother. Say thank you. And be a mensch. And if you burp, say excuse me. Don't say, oh, Kenai Namara. Just stay as a mensch. And that's why one of my pet peeves is somebody does you a favor. If you do somebody a favor, let's say you give somebody a ride. They get out of your car and say, Tizkila Mitzvahs. What does that mean? What does Tizkila Mitzvahs mean when people say, Tizkila Mitzvahs? You should merit to do many mitzvahs. Right? That's what it means. Like you did somebody a favor. They say, Tizkila Mitzvahs. What does that mean? That means you have given them a ride and now they've given you a bracha. They're giving you a blessing. That means you have earned the privilege of getting their blessing by giving them a ride. And if you wouldn't have given them a ride, they wouldn't be giving you a blessing, right? Don't say Tizkila Mitzvahs. Somebody does you a favor, say thank you. Don't give them blessings, right? Say thank you. Somebody does you, don't say Tizkila Mitzvahs, right? I don't need your blessing. You want to give them a blessing? Give them a blessing, but first say thank you. Thank you, Tizkila Mitzvahs. That you can say, but make sure you say thank you. Tizkila Mitzvahs just means we're even. You gave me a ride, and now I gave you a blessing. We're even. I don't owe you one. No. Thank you means I do owe you one. And you do owe him one because he gave you a ride. And your blessing, we could take it or leave it, right? Obviously, we never take anybody's blessing lightly. But as for our own benefit, realize that we have to remain a mensch. Even when somebody does something in shul, so we say Yasher Koyach. You ever hear people say Yasher Koyach? Somebody does, what do you call this? Somebody makes an aliyah or something. So that we do say Yishar Kochacha, your strength should continue. That they picked it up, the Sefer Torah, or whatever it was that they did, in shul. They got an aliyah, so a guy led the davening, you say Yasher Koyach. There, we don't say Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov is on an occasion of an engagement or a child is born. You don't say Mazel Tov when somebody does Hagba in shul. You don't say Mazel Tov. And you say, when your mother gives you supper, you don't say Mazel Tov. You say thank you. So just make sure you get it right, okay? By the way, I once heard this guy, two guys who were in shul, I love this. Two guys are in shul, and they're reading the Torah. And one of the guys had his head on, he dozed off during the reading. And they were at Chamishi. They're at the fifth Ali, and also the Gabbai goes, Yamod, Ruvain ben Shimon, Chamishi. And the guy all of a sudden, he hears his name. He'd been sleeping and hears his name called up for an aliyah. So he wakes up. The guy next to him's a prankster, and he leans over. This guy's kind of disoriented. He just woke up. And the guy leaning over next to him, the prankster, so he leans over, he whispers in his ear, be careful, it's heavy. Right? So he walks up to the Torah, and he picks up the Torah, and everybody's looking, what are you doing? Or El Chamishi, who asked you to pick up the Torah? It's a quick ticket to Gehenna for embarrassing him, but it was worth it. It wasn't me, by the way. It wasn't me. I wish I would have thought of it. So here the Torah says, the Torah talks about the laws of Nidarim. Neder, a Shvuah, an oath. A Neder means that a person is generally placing something in a forbidden category. So for example, a person wants to refrain from, let's say, drinking pop for a month. So he says, Bli Neder, I'm not going to drink Coke, or I'm not going to drink any cola drinks for a month. He's taking cola drinks and putting them into a forbidden category. as opposed to somebody who makes a shvuah, which is an oath, where it is confirming a fact, as opposed to taking something and putting it into what's generally a forbidden category. And these are all areas of life where a person, for example, a person may decide to pledge money to the shul. That's a neder, where a person pledges, he makes a pledge of money to the shul that he's going to make a donation to the shul. That's what the Parsha begins talking about. Now watch how it starts. There are a lot of technical laws. Remember the whole Masechta called Masechta Nedorim. There's a Masechta in Shas called Nedorim. Vaydaber Moshe el Roshei HaMattos Livnei Yisrael Lemor. Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes. Zeh hadover asher tziva Hashem. This is what Hashem has commanded. Now, Ish ki yidor neder la Hashem. When a man makes a neder, o he shava shvua, or he makes an oath, le'esor isor al nafsho, to prohibit something on himself, lo yachel devaro, he should not profane his word, kichol hayotze mipiv yaseh. He should do whatever he says. So first of all, the question is, why is this command given to the heads of the tribes? It says, "Vayidaber Moshe el Roshei HaMattos Livnei Yisrael Lemor." It starts to the heads of the tribes. Take a look at Rashi. First Rashi on the page, right column. Chilek Roshei HaMattos Chilek Kavod L'Nesidim. Moshe gave honor to the princes, the heads of the tribes. L'lamdam tchila, to teach them first, ve'achar kach l'chol b'nei Yisrael, and then to the rest of the b'nei Yisrael. Why does it start out with this? Why does it start out with the heads of the tribes, whereas most of the time, Moshe just gave the command to the entire Jewish people? Why does it start with head of tribes? There are several reasons here. Reason number one, the commentaries say, is that if a person makes a neder, there's a way out. If a person, let's say a person made a neder that they're not going to eat red meat for an entire month. Okay, chas v'shalom, right? We wouldn't want to do that, right? But let's say a person made it, they're not going to have red meat for an entire month. So he goes, in the first week he's okay, the second week he's okay, and then he gets to a wedding, and for the first time since he's been in Israel, they're serving what do you call it? They're serving ribeye steaks. Okay, like, boy, right? But he's got a problem because he made a neder. So there's a way to be released from the neder. The release from the neder is if you go to a Torah scholar, somebody who knows the laws well, and he will ask you, when you made the neder, had you known you would be facing a ribeye steak, would you have made that neder? And he says, no, I would never have made that neder. Then the neder is released. That means the neder was made under mistaken circumstances, as if you've never made a neder. Okay, that's to be matir a neder. That means that he finds a way, hold on question. He finds a way, a release, an opening. Sometimes a person makes a vow with all good intentions. Had I known that this was going to happen, I would have never not made the neder. I didn't know that. Let's say a guy makes a neder that he's not going to visit his in-laws for a month. Then he finds out that his in-laws are looking to give away a whole lot of money. Well, had I known, I would have never made that. I would have never made that neder. That means the neder was retroactively, there was no neder because it was a mistake. That's called a release. The only one who could make this release is a Torah scholar. So the commentaries say that's one of the reasons that this is said to the Roshei HaMattos. That the Roshei HaMattos, it's only the Torah scholars who know enough to be able to release somebody from the neder. Because if a person made the neder and he needs a release, that's why in Pirkei Avos, by the way, it says that you don't prompt somebody when he's making a neder. Never prompt him when he's making a neder. For example, a guy says, I'm making a neder. For example, a guy says he's making a neder, he's not going to eat red meat. And you're sitting there and say, do you including ribeye steak? Yeah, including ribeye steak. And including chuck steak? Yeah, including chuck steak. Including. Don't prompt him. Don't help him out. He made his neder, leave it, because if you prompt him, you may be blocking him off from what later may be the release. A guy decides he's making it, he's not going to drink wine, right? And then the next thing you know, somebody's got a 200-year-old bottle of wine don't prompt him. That's why I says don't prompt him. Number one. Number two, we see over here a very important lesson. It doesn't say this law anywhere in the Torah. This law of releasing from the vow, that he can release the vow, doesn't say it here. It's only the oral Torah that says it. And this is another one of the evidences that you can't understand the written Torah without the oral Torah. You have to have an oral Torah, because the oral Torah mentions this whole idea of releasing from the vows. The written Torah doesn't say it. And therefore the Torah says it to the Roshei Hamatos, the heads of the tribes, and only the heads of the tribes. Do you have a question? Say, yeah.
When you finish your...
Okay, that's going to be tomorrow. No, go ahead, please.
Isn't it counterintuitive to let somebody out of a commitment? Like if you say I'm not going to do this, but the second you're faced with
Oh, good, excellent question. It's an excellent question. It's not the second you're faced with it, because they will check you. And it's not the second you're faced with it. But if something came up which I really couldn't have anticipated, I mean, my intention was good. I really don't want to eat meat for a month. And the only meat in Israel is soy burgers. You know, I really don't want to eat beef for a month. I try to not eat beef. I want to get, and you know, had I known this, I really wouldn't have made the vow. I haven't had a ribeye steak in ever. You know, and so you know, and had I known this, I just wouldn't have made this vow. You know, if I'm vowing off a whiskey for a month. You know, I'm vowing off a whiskey, and then somebody shows up with a bottle of Blue Label. You know, whoa. You know, when I said whiskey, I certainly, if you knew that you were going to be facing, when's the last time you had Blue Label? Yeah, right. Right, all right. Yeah, because you know, right, because it's not that common. And all of a sudden, the guy shows up with the 200 bottle. What's that? The Mentor's Mission. Yeah, there you go. Really?
Last year.
Oh, last year, not this year. See, I couldn't even know this year. I'm not going to lie to you guys. That's my drink. You know, it doesn't happen that often.
You have to know the right guy. One guy brought it. You have to know the guy.
Yeah, I got to know the guy. It's always. You got to know the guy with the Blue Label. A class once gave me a bottle of Blue Label. The class gave me a bottle of Blue Label. What do you call it? They actually brought me a bottle. It was about $200. I brought it home. At $200. I'm telling you, ooh, you know, I had only had it once or twice, and it was smooth. There's no pain. It's very smooth. And I brought it home, and of course, my wife says to me, "You're not going to open it." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Because you're not such a connoisseur of whiskey that you need to drink $200 whiskey. We'll sell it." Number one. Number two, Pesach's going to be in 6 weeks, and it's chametz. So I said, look, concern number two is not going to be an issue, okay? Now it's only about concern number one, right? So it took me 3 days. I fought with myself for 3 days. And after 3 days, I lost. And I opened it up. And, you know, when you open a bottle of Blue Label, it's, you know, you open it, it comes in a bottle, and there's a little booklet in there. It's almost like Lahavdil taking the Sefer Torah out of the Aron Kodesh. It's like, he being so Aron, you take it out. There's a little booklet in there, you know, with the, what do you call it, from the distillery in Scotland with a picture of all the, so my son was about 9 years old. He looks at this picture, this booklet. It's got these guys working in the distillery in Scotland where they make the Johnny Walker. And these are a bunch of guys, you know, working with beards. And my son looks at it, he goes, "Daddy, are they tzaddikim?" I said, somehow I don't think so. You know, I think they're happy people, but I don't think they're tzaddikim. That was what do you call it? Your question is a good question. In other words, if a guy's just trying to horse around, is one thing. But sometimes people make a mistake. A guy had good intention, and that's why you have to go to a Torah scholar. Because the Torah scholar may say, no, that does not warrant release. A Torah scholar would say that does not warrant release from your vow. That's not a legitimate reason. Somebody else may say, you know, a Torah scholar may hear it, and he may say, yo, you want to eat a ribeye steak? You know what? I don't think that's a valid release. I think you could go do without the ribeye steak. That's why it has to be the head of the tribes. Okay, it's a good question. Okay, now, one more point. How do they become the heads of tribes? How does anybody become the head of a tribe? What? Married? Merit. What? All right. Okay, so let's say they had a merit. Then what officially made them the heads of the tribes? Yes, exactly correct. That means what changed him from one day being an ordinary citizen to the next moment becoming the head of a tribe was Moshe Rabbeinu saying, "You are the head of a tribe." It's like declassifying classified documents in the White House. Right? When Donald Trump declassified, how do you declassify? You are now declassified. It's only a word. It's not even clear how you declassify it. He says he's got the right to declassify. How do you declassify it? Top secret, what do you call it? You are officially declassified. It doesn't even say there, but it's your word. The word changed him. One day he was an ordinary citizen, and the next day he's a Nasi. How? The next moment. because exactly as you're saying, Moshe Rabbeinu said, you are a Nasi. That's it. It starts with the heads of the tribes because that emphasizes the power of a word. A word is so powerful, it could change the status of a human being. And therefore the Torah says, when it comes to Nedarim, when it comes to vows and oaths and pledges, that sort of thing, realize the power of a word. Realize the potency of a word. And if you want to realize the potency of a word, realize the potency of a word, the Rosh Mattos. Then there are others that say that this also, because Rosh Mattos, they weren't elected. But elected officials, people in high position, often make promises, right? And the promises are just promises, right? Promises without any real intent to fulfill. That's also, be careful when you're in a high position and people need you and you're promising people all sorts of things. Be careful with what you say, be careful what you promise, and therefore it's all contained right in the first pause. I'll get you 1 second, Nathan. Then the Torah says, and I want to show you a bit of a contradiction. Not a contradiction, but a redundancy. In the third line it says, Lo yachal devoro, a person should not profane his word. Once a person has made the oath, he shouldn't, page 900, third line, he shouldn't profane his word. Kichol hayotze mipiv yasa, whatever he says he should do. Sounds like a redundancy. If it says already, don't profane your word, so obviously whatever you say you should do. Right? Why the repetition? Why the double terminology? So, different approaches here, but one of the Mepharshim says, because it's not only by a vow. It's any time a person says something, you should keep you should stick to what you said. Even if you didn't make a promise, even if you just said to somebody, I'll meet you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Well, you should keep what you said. You meet them tomorrow at 4 o'clock. You should keep the man who was known for this in the previous generation, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said he never somebody asked him to what he attributed his long life. He lived to 95. He said he never knowingly told a lie in his life. He never knowingly said a mistruth, ever. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, when he was a yeshiva bacher, he was a litvak, hardcore litvak. Now, the litvaks on Pesach, the Hasidim have a minhag that they don't eat gebrux. You know what gebrux is? Gebrux is the matzah that's gotten wet. So they don't eat matzah balls on what do you call it? They don't eat matzah is completely dry. They don't put any butter on the matzah. They don't put anything on the matzah. It's a Hasidic minhag because in case any part of the matzah wasn't fully baked, so if anything touches it, it can start the fermentation process. It'll become chametz. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was a litvak. Litvaks make a point of eating gebrux. Litvaks make it to show we don't go. That's not a minhag we keep. Any red-blooded minhag eats gebrux. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky did not eat gebrux. He didn't eat gebrux. So they didn't know why. Why didn't he eat gebrux? So when he was a yeshiva bacher, he was about 16 years old, and he ended up at somebody's house for the Pesach Seder. And he was concerned about the kashrus. He was a little bit, the kashrus, what he goes. So they offered him something, and one of the foods was the matzah balls and the soup or whatever it is. And they asked him why he's not eating it. He said, I don't eat gebrux. From the moment that he said he doesn't eat gebrux, he never ate gebrux again. Why? Because he said, I don't eat gebrux. Later in life, his first wife was nifter, and he got married a second time. And the first Pesach Seder, his new wife, she served him matzah balls and the soup. So he didn't want to hurt his wife's feeling, so he waited till she went into the other room. There were 3 bachrim sitting at the table, so he annulled the vow, just like this. He annulled the vow not to eat gebrux because he didn't want to hurt his wife's feelings. So he did a Hataras Adar. That was number 1. Number two, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky started putting on tefillin. People who have a custom to put on tefillin, Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. There was the people about Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. He started when he was 90 years old. When he was 90 years old, he started putting on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. People take off the regular tefillin, they put on Rabbeinu Tam. So somebody asked him, why did you start when you're 90? He said he was 45. When he was 45, he came walking out of a shul. He was in shul, he finished davening, and a man in the shul said to him, you know what, you ought to wear Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky laughed. He says, you know what, I'll start when I'm 90. Because he said it, he started when he was 90 years old. That's kechol hayotze mipiv yasa. That's what kechol hayotze. He was actually once asked to write a letter of recommendation for somebody from a yeshiva, and was given the yeshiva stationery, and he looked at the picture of the yeshiva stationery, and they have a picture of the yeshiva building, and outside on the stationery have a couple of trees on the stationery. He said he can't write on that stationery because the yeshiva doesn't have trees in front. It's an untruth. That's why he was the man of truth. That's what it says. Even if you just say something, you should do it, because we don't just speak truth. Nathan, what we're going to ask?
You already answered my question.
That's don't tell anybody. That's Ruach HaKodesh. I don't want people to know. Then I have to give blessings and everything else. It takes a lot of time. Just kidding. I'll take money for it though. Yeah. See you tomorrow, guys.
Thank you, Rabbi.